let's sit nice and tall, and we'll close the eyes. And just take a moment to come into the space to arrive. A moment of awareness. Noticing how your body feels today, how your mind is behaving, what your heart is longing for. And not judging what you find, just noticing it. And remind yourself that the foundation for all you are, for everything that is housed within this physical body, for everything that is the soul, the spirit of your being, the foundation is peace. The foundation is shanti. And even if you have difficulty accepting that or believing in that to be true, just say it to yourself anyway. Say, my foundation is peace. The true essence of myself is peace. All these other things are just little waves rising up from the ocean. They too will become peaceful again. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart with the great intention to know inner peace, to explore it, to experience it. We lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Bowing the head to the heart, acknowledging all that is. And draw the face to center, release the hands. And so today we're going to talk about two things, basically. We're going to talk a little bit about peace, shanti. But we're going to talk about components of peace and what peace actually is when we're living it. And for that, we're going to talk about Sauca. And Sauca is the sixth of the virtues that are discussed by Patanjali. It's the first niyama, Sauca, cleanliness. On the face of it, cleanliness is to shower regularly, to make sure that your body is generally clean, your hair is clean, your space is clean, But that's the superficial level of it. It's necessary because to have a clean body, to have a clean space, means there's less possibility of illnesses and injuries that would otherwise be related to that. So it's important, but it's only a small part of the picture. When we're talking about Sauca, when we're talking about cleanliness, we're actually talking about purity, mental purity. We're talking about intentional purity. We're talking about sound purity, purity in our behavior, in our actions. And I know that word purity can turn people off sometimes, but it doesn't mean puritanical. The word purity is not a negative word. It is not something where you're going to sit and lash yourself 50 times, because you have an emotion. No. Purity is honesty. Purity is truthfulness. Purity is generosity. Purity is being unburdened by that which you don't need to be burdened by. Purity is love, unconditionally, which is something that as humans we never get too close to. We really don't. We think we do from time to time, but we don't. More on that later. So Sauca, cleanliness, is so intertwined with these other behaviors. It's really about keeping our body, our mind, and our emotion in good working order, such that we can be generous, we can be humble, we can be modest, we can be loving, we can be accepting, we can bend like the reed bends in the wind, adapt, adjust, and accommodate, as Swami Shivananda would say. Purity is our ability to experience, explore, and come to know the spiritual path that we are on, unencumbered by an unhealthy ego. The unhealthy ego, when the ego is unhealthy, which is most times, when the ego is unhealthy, then we're not clean. Because the ego commands us to be violent, to be hurtful, to hoard, to be greedy, to blame, to judge, to separate, to segregate, to do all those things that we know in our hearts are wrong. Wrong because they're not peaceful. Wrong because they're not in line, aligned with unity and dharma. So they are adharma, misaligned, and the cause of suffering. Anything that is the cause of suffering is not clean. Lots of things can cause suffering, though. So there's a second kind of a thought there, and that is the intention behind the action. Any action taken that imposes suffering for the sake of suffering is not clean. An innocent action that is taken with no foul intention whatsoever, but somebody ends up feeling hurt over it, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. It all really does come down to your intention, to the purity of your intention. And if the intentions are pure, that's clean. And if they're not, then it's not clean. When we start talking about cleanliness, we might begin to recognize that when we're in an unclean state of mind, when we're in an unclean state of our lifestyle, our suffering increases 1,000-fold. When our suffering is increasing unnecessarily, where is peace to be found? We lose faith in peace, so we don't experience it. So it makes sense to work to have a clean, clear mind, a clean, clear perspective, and clean, clear intention, and to practice all of the abilities of the body and mind in such a way that's aligned with that, so that unnecessary suffering reduces and we reestablish our faith in peace because we have some space for it. We actually have some space to experience it. And also, in that moment where the necessary suffering happens, we're not so discolored by the presence of unnecessary suffering. We can actually give that necessary suffering what it needs from us, which is time, compassion, and awareness, space to heal. Have you ever had that happen where you say to yourself, I just can't take any more because I'm so overloaded now. This, and that. They all cause me so much suffering. And then something happens. A friend is hurt. A loved one is in trouble. And it just throws you over the top because you're like, I don't have any more to give anybody. If you look at that scale honestly, with clean intention, what you'll find is that that pile of unnecessary suffering that could have been avoided through lifestyle change, mental understanding, emotional maturity, all of these types of things, support, asking and giving support, that pile would have lessened drastically and given you so much more space to practice service to another human being who needs you. But too often, we become entwined with the unnecessary suffering. And I don't know, maybe psychologically speaking, it's to avoid the necessary suffering. Maybe we adopt the unnecessary suffering because we do have some control over that. Actually, we have complete control over that. In order to avoid the necessary suffering, which we really don't have that much control over, if any at all. What's the necessary suffering? Well, this biological body aging and changing, the process of birth, the process of death, and the process of being a biological species for every moment in between that. Stub the toe, bang the knee, gash on the arm. My son walked into a metal telephone pole the other day and gave himself a concussion. I mean, one might ask if that's necessary suffering. Okay. He wasn't paying attention, he said. So probably the act was unnecessary suffering, but the concussion that happened afterward was certainly necessary. Right? He had this big welt on his head. How much space can you give yourself for that suffering which is necessary? And that requires that we look at our life. So when we're looking at cleanliness, we can begin by looking at this very beautiful mantra, which is a mantra in Ayurveda called the Svastha mantra. Svastha is the word for health. When we are clean, we have a level of health. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. And the Svastha mantra describes what health actually is for us. The sama dosha, sama agnischa, sama dhatu malakriyaha, prasanna atma indriya, manaha svastha iti abhidhiyate. Sama dosha. To be healthy, your doshas need to be the same, balanced. Sama kind of means balanced, harmonious, the same. So your doshas need to be balanced. Pitta can't be crazy. Vata can't be out there somewhere. Kapha can't be so stuck and grounded. They all have to be interacting appropriately for any given moment, which in some languaging says that they are neutralized by one another. The suffering that they cause is neutralized by their sameness, by their appropriateness. So sama dosha, balance the doshas. Sama agnischa. Agni is the Sanskrit word for fire. Agni is the inner fire, the inner radiance within yourself. There are 13 fires in your body, and large part, they're mostly responsible for digestion. Digestion of food, assimilation of the nutrients, and then elimination of what's left over that your body can't consume in this moment. And those fires need to be operating properly. They need to be sama. They need to be appropriate to one another. If they're not appropriate to one another, then you're experiencing some kind of suffering, whether it's acid reflux or diarrhea or constipation or malnutrition. If the digestive fires are not properly radiant, then your body is suffering. And many times that's unnecessary because it's all dietary adjustment. And it's also lifestyle adjustment. Agni is also responsible for your personal radiance, for the way that you shine in the world, for the light that you emit. And so if your inner Agni is not radiating properly, then you're dull in your own life. And you know that on some level if you are, because you feel what comes along with that. Lack of inspiration, confusion, slowness. And that is unnecessary suffering because it just requires lifestyle accommodation and adjustment and maybe a visit to a doctor. If it has gone into a chronic situation where there's depression involved, where there is some other medical situation involved, then seek out the medical help that you need, the medical support. There's nothing wrong with medication when medication is necessary. There's a lot wrong with medication when it's not. but it's taken anyway. So part of our spiritual path is creating this sama, this appropriate relationship between our behavior, our mind, our intention, our heart, all of it, so that we understand what is needed and what is not needed, what is necessary and what is not necessary. I went to a Krishna Das, he's a Kirtan Wala. I went to a program he was doing up at what is his name? One of the big schools up in New York. And he was co-hosting this with a gentleman who wrote a book on dream interpretation. This is years ago. And there was a person in the audience, and she got up, and I'm not sure why she asked this question. It had something to do with what they were talking about. But she said to them, she's a yoga therapist, and she has a client, and the client is on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. And she really wanted to get her off these medicines. And so she was asking for, some thoughts about that. And Krishna Das, who I love dearly because of his candor and also because of all of his other gifts, but definitely his candor, he sat there for a moment and he said, "How long have you known this person?" And she said, "Well, I started working with her like maybe a month ago or something." And he said, "And in that time, have you known her to be a fairly balanced person?" And she went, "Yeah, exactly. She's a very balanced person." And he looked at her and he said, "How do you know she's not a balanced person? Because of the medication she's on. And that if you, without talking to her doctor, without appropriate guidance, take her off of that medicine, she becomes someone you don't know and maybe you don't want to know." So, appropriate relationship. We can't pretend to know the things that we don't know. And we shouldn't hide from the things that we do. The radiance walking through the world is about that in some part. It's also being of service. When we are of service to the healing of others, to the integration of all into unity. When we recognize unity, then we're walking through the world as a light. And that light lends itself to all of the other fires within the body and to the essence of our existence and the quality of it. Samadosha sama agnischa. Sama dhatu. The dhatu is a tissue. So the tissues of the body, not just the tissue of the skin, but the tissues of your organs. And all the cells come together to create tissues. And tissues have lots of functions in your body. May those tissues all be appropriate. May they have appropriate relationship to one another, and may they function appropriately. Because some tissues are supposed to die away, and then other tissues are born to replace them. That's your cellular reproduction. Anybody here get keloid scars? I have a keloid scar right here on my arm. I had to go for a blood test, and so they take those two little blades and they go, right? And then the blood comes out and they collect the blood, and they also see how long it takes you to stop bleeding. Well, I have a little keloid scar there. It's a scar that's raised above the surface. It's too much tissue returned in place of the injury. Bone will do that too if you've broken a bone. Typically what happens is that your bone will start to create more bone cells and place those bone cells in such a matrix as to heal the broken bone. But oftentimes it will lay down more bone than it's necessary in order to bring the tensile strength back into the structure, because once the bone is broken, it's lost some of its integrity. So it adds more. So your bone may have a lump, and I actually had a broken bone up here, and now I have this big lump right here, right, from where it was broken, because more bone tissue got laid down. That's appropriate. But sometimes it goes a little crazy, a little haywire, and it lays down way too much bone, or not enough bone. Or maybe the cells of your body are creating way too many cells, or not enough. So when your cells and your tissues are not functioning properly, then it's leading you into a state of illness. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. It's biology. Other times, there's something you can do about it. Lifestyle, food, supplements, appropriateness. They say the appropriate things, appropriate rest, appropriate exercise, appropriate meditation, appropriate food, appropriate intention, appropriate mindset. Practicing all these things appropriately helps to alleviate unnecessary stress from the body. And alleviating stress from the body is good for the telomeres of your DNA so that your cells are less damaged as a result of your own behavior. And then maybe you have a little more space to deal with the things that you don't have as much control over by seeing the specialists in those areas. Maybe. So sama agnischa, sama datu, mala kriyaha. So mala is waste and kriya is cleansing. So waste cleansing, your elimination. Your body should be able to eliminate appropriately. If you're constipated, you have diarrhea, you sweat too much, too little, all of these things. You don't detoxify because your breathing is not appropriate. Our exhale is the number one way our body detoxifies. And if we are rapid, shallow breathers, then we don't have a long exhalation and we're not detoxifying our body appropriately. How can we be clean if we're full of toxins? We can't be. How can we be considered clean if we are burdening our cellular structure and the tissues that they create with unnecessary stress and tension all the time? We can't be. How can we be clean if our fire is dull? We can't be. Not in that moment anyway. How can we be clean if our doshas are at war with one another? We can't be. Not in that moment. Sama agnischa malakriyaha prasanna atma indriya. We must have a mindset that allows our senses to be controlled and our mind to be of a positive quality. So that our eyes, our ears, the sight, the sound, smell, taste, and touch are not running amok. Give me that apple pie. Give me that chocolate cake. I'm more likely to go for the chocolate cake, not the apple pie. Give me that chocolate cake. Give me that person. Give me that thing. The senses, when they are going out into the world, they take us out there with them, and they take us on a ride, like a roller coaster ride. Like one of the worst roller coasters in the world, the kind that you're screaming on constantly, right? So we rein in the senses. We rein them in. Discerningly, but compassionately. With discipline, but not with hate and anger. Because we understand that the senses need to be corralled a bit in order for the horses to be tame. Otherwise, they're wild. And when our senses are running wild, how can we be clean? We can't. It's not possible. And then finally, samadhatu malakriyaha prasanatma indriya manah svastha iti abhihiyate. And the person who has faithful devotion, this person is considered to be a healthy person. Faithful devotion means that you practice your sadhana daily, regularly. And actually, forget daily. Forget daily. Forget the 1 hour a day thing, okay? Just get rid of it. Just let it go. Not daily. Every minute, every moment, and every breath becomes your sadhana. You don't need an excuse to get on your yoga mat. You are the excuse. You don't need to find another one. You also don't need a yoga mat. So just do a downward dog. Stand up tall in Tadasana. Sit properly. Breathe with intention. Do your yoga sadhana or your spiritual sadhana. You don't need a reason to say a prayer. You don't have to wait until you're in crisis to say a prayer. You just don't. You can say it in a moment where everything is absolutely peachy keen and completely wonderful. Om Shanti Swarupaha Aham. In this moment, I am the form of peace, and I am so grateful that it's so easy in this moment because who knows about the next one. So let me celebrate it now so I have that relationship being cultivated, me and peace. And then So look at it this way. You meet somebody in a coffee shop. Have a conversation. Do you have faith in that person that they'll show up for you if you have something happen in your life? No. Why? Because you hardly know them. You have not cultivated the relationship. But, you invite them out for another coffee and you spend some time getting to know each other. And eventually your faith deepens in that person. Or it doesn't. But let's say it does. Your faith deepens in that person, and eventually you know that if you need that person, they're a phone call away. They're a text message away. And you know that you're the same if they need you. You're there. Peace is like that. How do you cultivate a relationship with peace if you never give yourself time to get to know it? How can you? You can't. You can't. So even in the good moments, what we call good, even in the easy moments, we say, Om Shanti Swarupa Aham. Because it's so much easier to say it then. But say it enough then, and when the times are difficult, you'll know you can say it there too. Because you will have cultivated faith in the process of peace. You'll know it's true. Does that all make sense? Yeah. So this beautiful mantra, the Svastha mantra, it gives us a grounding, a foundation for cleanliness. Clean body, clean mind, clean emotions, clean intentions. And also when we're walking through the world, the things that we see, the things that we hear, the things that we smell, the things we taste, and the things that we touch and feel, these all play a part too. So we need to be mindful about that and minimize the amount of violent television and movies that we watch. Minimize the amount of violent music that we listen to. Minimize the amount of gossip that we take part in, whether we're listening to it or offering it. Minimize the amount of cruddy food that we eat, like the kind that's basically cardboard that has no nutritional value. Minimize our accessibility to harmful substances, because those harmful substances will hurt us and they will infect us with doubt in such a way that we will begin to think they have more power than peace does. So you ever hear gossip? Right? Why don't you go into the group that's gossiping and say, this is not peaceful? Because somewhere in the back of the mind, we've been culturally trained to believe that gossip is more powerful than peace. And that some people have more value than others. Be bold in your relationship with peace. Stand up for peace. And if you're in a situation where people are not being peaceful, then do one of two things. Walk away from it. Keep your peace and your relationship to your peace strong. Or say, this is violence. This is not peaceful. Therefore, I will not be part of it. And if they don't change what they're doing in that moment and kind of start asking questions or talking in another way, then leave. You don't need to put yourself to that. It's not healthy. It's just not. And when we think about specifically gossip is very unclean because A, it's usually not true. Right? Most oftentimes it's an exaggeration at least and a lie at the most. Somebody's always getting hurt. We don't gossip nice things about people. We say cruel and harmful things about people. We dehumanize them. We make them somehow less than we are. And when we gossip about people in that way, what we're really doing is kicking them, punching them, putting them down, and imposing unnecessary suffering on them in order to somehow avoid it ourselves. But here's the thing, we're not avoiding anything. Because what we give to them, we are ourselves experiencing by way of guilt, by way of self-hate, and by way of confirmation of our false confirmation, but still of our greatest fear that we are not capable. and we just broke down our relationship to peace. So if we want to build the relationship to peace, then we need to show ourselves how strong we are. Varada mudra, abhaya mudra. I will take everything that comes my way and I will give all I have fearlessly. Peace is my greatest commodity. So wherever I go, that's what I will be. And I will not be quiet in the face of violence. Quiet is not peace. It's not. Gandhi, I think, might have been the one to say, spirituality is not being dull. It's not sitting in a cave somewhere. Purity is not sitting in a cave somewhere, segregated from all of society and the typical day-to-day problems of all humans and all beings. Peace is activism. Peace is being in the world, but not being of the world. Peace is the ability to see clearly, to speak truthfully, to hear with discrimination, to use all the senses in a way that honors the spiritual trajectory that each and every one of us are on, starting with ourself first. And we have to start with ourself first. It's easy to start with other people first because it gives us an excuse to avoid ourselves, right? If I fix you, I can avoid my work. But what's that going to do? Because if I go around fixing everybody else, I'm still broken, or at least I think I am, right? And so it has to be self first. We have to pay attention to the things in ourselves that need to adjust, adapt, and accommodate to the relationship to peace. We need to clean out our own house. So continuing, I have a couple of other notes. The Bhagavad Gita is another source that tells us a whole lot about what cleanliness is, what Sauca is. He gives a long, long list, Krishna, talking to Arjuna. This is only a short list. Here's a few. Cleanliness is a spiritual practice. That's chapter 3, verse 28. Cleanliness is one of the 30 qualities that should be acquired by every seeker. That's chapter 7, verse 11. Cleanliness is the quality of the best workers. That's chapter 7, verse 11. And what that means is that the best workers, the most efficient workers, the workers who put faith in their work, they're clean by way of they don't steal, they don't gossip, they don't waste energy and time, they don't waste things. Their intention is clean and pure. And here's a little story to exemplify that. There are 3 men working at the same site. And there's a visitor that comes to the site. And he goes up to the first man and he says, What are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. And the man says, well, I'm sweating, I'm miserable, and I'm hammering away at this rock. Oh, okay. Well, may you have a successful day hammering away at that rock. And he goes up to the second man he encounters and he says, good sir, what are you doing here today? And he says, well, I'm doing whatever I'm told. He said, I'm moving this rock and it's heavy. He says, okay. Well, may your burden be light. And may your instructions that you receive be clear. And he goes up to the third man and he says, what are you doing? And the man looks at him and he says, I'm building a temple. I am building a temple. He was doing the same work as the first 2 men, but his mindset was different. He saw the sacredness in what he was doing, even if it was difficult work, hard work, as most of our work is, hard. It's not to say that we disregard the difficulty of the work, not at all. Your body will get tired, your mind will be fatigued, you'll know the difficulty of the work you're doing. But the heart says, don't cause yourself unnecessary suffering by focusing on the negative. No. When you focus on that, you forget about this. You're building a temple. You're building a temple that is going to bring many hours, many moments, many opportunities for peace for so many people. It's going to bring people together. It's going to bring you. So focus on that. And don't focus on how much you don't like to hit rocks with a hammer. He goes on to say, in chapter 11, verse 3, cleanliness is necessary to serve the guru. And this is true. My guru, Swami Adyatmanandaji, I know many of his disciples. And so many have so much love in their heart. You know, it's like they're so grateful for all he shares with them. Every once in a while, though, maybe I meet someone who has a guru, and some of Swamiji's too, I'm sure, who say, why does he talk to me like that? He shouldn't talk to me like that. He should talk nicer to me. He should give me more information. He should give me more. The intention's not clean. There's not gratitude there. How can you have a guru if you don't have gratitude for what they have decided to share, which is everything that you need to know? How can you cultivate faith in a teacher if all you ever do is talk down about the teacher? How can you love your spouse if all you ever say is, I hate my spouse? Right? It's so true. But the guru relationship, the guru-disciple relationship is one that is an absolute relationship. It's a relationship of surrender on both parts. Surrender on the part of the disciple in order to build faith that what the guru is sharing is actually soul-saving. And surrender on the part of the guru to have faith in the student that the student genuinely wants to learn and will. Certainly there are unhealthy relationships in that realm as well. We have to say that because it's the truth. And that is, I don't even know the word for it. I would say unfortunate, but that's not strong enough. That anybody would abuse their power with another person is a heinous act of uncleanliness. Anytime we abuse the power we have in relationship, it's heinous. It's horrible. And it is adharmic, meaning it is not dharma, and it is karmically burdensome. So burdensome. So we need to always be humble. And that's what the guru-disciple relationship, when it is a healthy one, teaches us. When it is a proper one, it teaches us what humility really is. How to be humble with one another. I'm sitting here wearing orange robes, and oftentimes people think that that makes me special. It doesn't make me special. I'm not different than you are. I have a life. I struggle. I make decisions every day. I worry. I practice my practice. I sit and I do my japa. Some days I skip. Totally. I'm human. We're all the same. So don't think that you're superior over someone else, and don't think that you're inferior to them either. You're just having a little bit of a different experience than they are. I've had the blessing of walking alongside my guru for many years and learning what I've learned. And you're in that process now. And I don't know, maybe some of you are even more learned. Who knows? Because you're not talking about it, right? So I don't know. But maybe you are. Maybe I have a thing or two I can learn from you. Isn't that the way it is? Yeah. So don't put people on pedestals and don't knock them down either. Just leave them alone. And adapt, adjust, and accommodate your own life to a greater level of cleanliness. Starting first with the environment you live in, because that's easy. Clean up your stuff. Get rid of what you don't need. Keep what you do. And if you have things that you're sentimentally attached to, understand that your sentimental attachment is a form of uncleanliness, but it's okay because it's nowhere near as harmful as some other forms. Have a nice place for them. Acknowledge that this is an attachment. And it is one where I'm going to practice gratitude. I'm grateful for the memory that this brings forward. I'm grateful for the relationship it reminds me of. But I'm also going to work such that if the day ever came that I no longer had this object, I would understand the memory is still valid and the relationship is still good. And that this is a tool to remind me of that in this moment because I need that reminder. But I won't always need that reminder. Be willing to grow beyond your attachments. Does that make sense? Yeah. The next one. Usually my memory is much better than this, but I'm going to go right down on this one. It's fine. All right, so the next one. Chapter 11, verse 18. Cleanliness is a virtue of those who have realized God. So a seeker of God, goddess, an individual who has had moments of realization of divinity, it's cleanliness, it's purity, it's conscious awareness with no strings attached of any kind. Initially, it breaks our heart. When we have an awareness of God, of goddess, initially, it breaks our heart. It's like the tears flow and we become overwhelmed by emotions. And that's okay because that's a cleansing. The heart is being broken open so that the light can shine, not so that the light burns out. We need to, like a cicada bug eliminates its exoskeleton, or a snake gets rid of its skin so that it can become larger, so are we. We break that little heart open so the bigger one can emerge. And that bigger one is full of the divine grace rather than the unhealthy ego. Verse 11.18 again, but further on in sub-verse 43. Cleanliness is a quality to be practiced by the householder. So the householder versus the renunciate. Householder, you're householders. You have families. You have houses. You pay bills. You have jobs. You do what you do. That's a householder. Renunciate, someone who's taken a vow of renunciation from all or most of the world. As a monk, I've taken vows of renunciation for much of the world, but not to move away from the world, but to go deeper into the world and be of greater service to those who need me. So I've renounced certain things, like I will not get married again. I will not hold a 9-to-5 job because this is what I offer. This is the service, is the teachings. And so I'm not going to concern myself with other things so that I have space for this. And all of these things I don't do for me. I do them as devotion. Householders, most of what a householder does is for their family. Is for the well-being of their family life. And that's the way that it's supposed to be. But there's also space there for spiritual growth. And there needs to be space in the householder's day-to-day life for spiritual growth. Because one day in the householder's life, they will come into what's called the Vata Phase. The phase where they want to start downsizing. They don't want to have so much stuff. They start looking at life differently. It usually happens, in the typical person, starts around age 40, definitely age 50 and on. And the older a person gets, the more renunciated they become. The more they are diving deeper into their spiritual questions. And the more they're leaving the material questions behind. So something very important for the householder to practice. 11.21, cleanliness is a means of cleaning one's mind and body. And then 11.19, cleanliness is a means of detachment from desire-laden actions. So when we are saying to ourselves, why do I have to be such a hurtful person? Why do I have to be such a jealous person? Why do I have to be such a negative nanny? Well, that statement right there tells us where our work is meant to be. So we practice cleanliness. We say, well, if I really do feel that my tendency is to be a harmful person, then I'm going to learn some tools so I can be less harmful. Practice those tools. Not 1 hour a day, but every day, every minute. If I'm a negative nanny, then I'm going to say, well, that's where my work needs to be. So I'm going to pay attention to the things that I think and the things that I say as a result of what I think. And I'm going to change my thoughts. And I'm going to start looking for the more positive things to say. Not positivity as in rose-colored glasses, but positivity by way of acknowledgement of divine grace, acknowledgement that goodness exists, and that we all have access to it. So we're sitting here right now, and some people could say, well, it's chilly in here. I don't like it, it's chilly in here. Someone else can say, it's too warm in here. And odds are, those two extremes are there. Someone else could say, oh, it's just right. This is the way I always love it. But that's not why you're here. You're not here to concern yourself with, is it too cold? Is it too warm? Is it just right? You're here to concern yourself with the teachings. And by concerning yourself with what you're meant to concern yourself with, that is positive rather than negative. Because on the face of it, it might seem like, this is the perfect temperature, I love this. It might seem neutral and positive, but is it really? Because in a moment, big draft can come through and steal that from you. Then it's not perfect anymore. But the teachings can never be stolen from you. They're the truth of you. And you'll carry them out the door with you. And even if you don't remember all of them, you'll remember something. Even if it's not in the next moment, it'll be at some point when you need it. It'll be there because it's part of your foundation of peace. It's already part of you. This is just a reminder. Time check. Doing really good with my time checks. Yeah. Typically, I don't do time check until after the hour. But since we came back, I've been doing good. My time checks are 10 minutes before the end of the hour. So I have the chance to say, any questions or reflections from anybody? Any questions or reflections? Does it sound complicated? It's not really. Do we make it complicated? Oh, yeah. Oh, Lordy.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound complicated until in the moment it feels real complicated.
Yeah. Just have an adversarial interaction with somebody, and see how difficult it is. But that's when we need the mantra, Om Shanti Swarupaha Aham. Even in this moment, I am the form of peace. And then the ego is going to say, no, you're not. No, you're not. Kick them. Grab that sale item. Put him down. Call him a jerk. And in your heart, you're saying, Om Shanti Swarupaha Aham. You go ahead and take it. I really don't need it anyway. I've got 27 sweaters at home I never wear. There's 4 parking spots right next to this one, so I'll take one of those. No worries. I guess, in our colloquialism, we call it being the bigger person, right? How do we be the bigger person? But we're not really trying to be the bigger person because we're not making them small. What we're saying is, I'm going to let my heart be as big as my heart wants to be. And in doing so, maybe that will inspire them to let their heart be a little bigger too in a difficult moment, which this doesn't have to be. This does not have to be a difficult moment. There are moments that have to be difficult moments. Someone takes your parking spot, that's not one of them. Someone takes the sale sweater that you had your eye on, that's not one of them. It's just not. Like my grandma would have told me when I was little, don't be greedy when there's people in the world who don't have a sweater. Eat all your food. We lived by the Clean Plate Club. My Nana was from Ireland, and she was in Ireland during the potato famine. One of them, there were many potato famines, but she was in Ireland during that time. She came here when she was 16. And so she was part of the Clean Plate Club. And not because she was just trying to be a pain, clean your plate. But because she knew what it was to not have anything to put on that plate. And she knew what it was to be grateful when you finally did. And that's what she was trying to teach me. But, at a certain point in my childhood, I very much heard what she was saying. And then, when it was something I didn't like, it's like, I don't want to belong to the Clean Plate Club now. You can belong to the Clean Plate Club. I don't need that club, thank you. you know. But that would have been the moment, had I known, to say Om Shanti Swarupa Aham. I am the form of peace even now. And the same lesson is present even now that she was teaching me when it was easy to be taught, even now when it's more difficult. Thoughts or questions?
Well, I had a difficult situation because it's a family time, you know, with the holidays and everything. And if this is too personal and you just want me to stay after, just let me know. But
I just want to let you know I am recording. Is that okay?
yeah, it's okay. I won't use any names. Or
Okay, I'm not videotaping, so
No,
okay,
but
very good.
I have just a sister that we had a falling out like a year and a half ago, and it breaks my heart that we never repaired it. You know, when we were kids, you would fight, you would make up, but she said, you know, that what happened was too hurtful to her, and that when she's around me, it just makes her stomach upset and basically makes her sick, and that she can't trust me. And no matter how many times I tried to take responsibility for what I did, repair it, have regret, or just, you know, send her like loving kindness, she doesn't want to forgive me. So it's really hard for me when we're in a family situation. She will be with me in a polite situation for the sake of my 91-year-old father and do group things with the other siblings, but she doesn't have an interest in having, you know, a more personal relationship like we used to before this event happened. And so it was very difficult in these group family situations for me to be in my natural self, and so I just sort of withdraw, and I don't know how to be, I don't know what to do forward.
And my heart is with you. These are challenging situations when we see families breaking down like that. The first thing that we can do is understand what it is to be a human being on a linear timeline. You have a history with this person. When you were children, you were much different because you hadn't been hurt yet, you know. And so you didn't have the burden of carrying a lot of life's unnecessary suffering compiled with life's necessary suffering. You had space. And as a child, most of the spaciousness for most children in healthy circumstances is play, grow, learn, get to know your emotions, have responses and reactions. You know, there's just a lot of back and forth there. And there wasn't, again, the compilation of unnecessary plus necessary suffering over a long period of time. As we get older, no matter what family we're in, we put this burden on our back. Like, you ever see those women who carry those big baskets, right? It starts getting full. You know, it starts getting full of arguments. It starts getting full of, well, this hurt me, that hurt me, this hurt me. Is that all I'm ever going to do is get hurt? And eventually we lose our resiliency, we lose our spaciousness because we begin to see the suffering that we've experienced in life, both unnecessary and necessary, as being what life is about, as being the only thing we're really ever going to experience. And at some point, there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, right? And that's where we say, I can't do anymore. That's not your responsibility. It sounds, according to what you've said, you're taking care of your responsibility. You've acknowledged whatever part in this you played. You've said you're sorry. You've accepted responsibility. And you send her loving kindness constantly. That's exactly what you should do, or could do if you chose to. You can't make her ready. You cannot.
Yeah, I think I'm just having trouble with the acceptance of it.
Yeah. So when you see your sister and when you send her the loving kindness, recognize that you're not the only one who caused her hurt and harm. That she is probably surrounded by several hundred people. And in some way, shape, or form, every single one of those people have contributed a burden to that basket. So send her loving kindness, and also send her this intention, something along the lines of, may your burden be lessened, may your heart be spacious, and may you find forgiveness for all who have hurt you. And in this way, you're giving her a great gift. You're giving her the gift of not pressuring her into a behavior she's not ready for. And you're also giving her the gift of seeing her. It's one thing to say, why can't you forgive me? It's another thing to say, there's like 200 people who have thrown stuff at you too. You know, in Christianity, I don't remember the names. I was raised Catholic, and I went to Catholic school for a while, and I'm often amazed at how much I don't remember. But there's a story about the Christ said, "He who is without sin cast the first stone," right? And that was the prostitute when they were casting stones at her. If it was one person throwing a stone, it might not be a big deal, right? But it was a crowd of people. They could have killed her. They were throwing so many stones. And Christ, Jesus, but the Christ aspect of Jesus came forward and said, stop, and let the one who is without sin cast the first stone. In this instance, a little bit different. Everyone has already casted stones, and some people still are. Stop. How much more can she take? Step back. Have compassion. Send loving kindness. And send her the intention that all those who are casting stones, or who have, should take those stones back. And let her find her way to healing. And then just be there if she needs you. And don't be, when you're in family gatherings and she's there and you're feeling uncomfortable, Om Shanti Swarupa Aham, even in this moment. Even in this one. Even in this one where I want to crawl under the carpet or go sit in the closet somewhere or run away. Even in this one, I'm going to be peace. And I'm going to laugh at the jokes if I want to. And I'm going to enjoy the food if I do. And I'm going to be present fully. Because only in your being fully present will she have some glimpse of what the healing is potentially in this situation. But you also can't control how she sees anything, so you need to know that. But we always want to walk as an example. Angelique?
So I just want to say that, your situation, I'm sure you know, is not unique.
Not at all.
The same story. Literally, not a sister, but the same exact story. I guess my question, I think those things, but I feel like I need to impose my will on her too, so that she knows that this is what I'm thinking. I just let you know that I am hoping that you, you know what I mean? That's never really what we're after, right? We're never allowed to unburden ourselves by saying it just direct. Instead of just sending it out there, can I?
Sure. I mean, there's a difference, right? You can certainly say to somebody, you can certainly say to somebody, I just wanted to share with you that I've set this intention to be present if and when you decide you're ready to talk to me and to share with me whatever it is that you need to share. And that's that. But if you say that every Sunday when you see them at family dinner, that's overkill. If you say it to them every day on the phone, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You ready yet? Why aren't you ready yet? Okay, call me when you're ready. That's just unnecessary suffering. So you can definitely let them know that you're there for them, of course, absolutely. And I would even suggest that that's necessary. But you don't have to be a broken record about it. All you have to do is be clear. Clarity does not require repetition. Not really. It just requires that you say it and then you live it. You say it and then you live it. And when that phone does ring, Om Shanti Swarupa Aham, no matter what they say, because they might not be calling you to say, hey, I've been thinking about it and I really do forgive you. They might be calling you to say, I've really been thinking about it and I am so pissed and I just need you to know how I felt over these past 2 years so that I can get past it too. And then they start screaming at you, Om Shanti Swarupa Aham, Om Shanti Swarupa Aham. This is a situation of your own making. And of theirs. And of everyone else who was ever involved. So you need to stand witness to it. And not take it personally. It's not the only way this person is ever going to feel about you. How many of you in here are married? Okay. You love your spouse, right? Right. Are there days where you're like, I don't know if I love you right now? Of course there are. You're not always going to feel the exact same, and neither are they. And so we go through that. We say, I love you so much, I don't love you anymore. But you better love me every day, 24/7, without exception, right? I think that's more women than men, though. I don't know. Yeah. Men are like, yeah, I love you. I said it last week. Doesn't that one still count? If you ever have the opportunity, you should watch this David Gray. His last name is Gray. Is it David Gray? He wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Gary.
Yeah.
I think it's
Gray, yeah. Well, his last name is Gray. He's phenomenal. And he has this he's got lots of talks online, but there's this one in particular where he talks about the point system between men and women, and how the points mean everything to women and they don't really mean anything to men, and that's the problem. Because if you give a woman flowers, you've got 50 points. If you do the dishes and she comes home while you're doing the dishes, you got 150 points. If you say I love you without being prompted, you get another 100 points. If you wake up the next morning and you don't look in her eyes and tell her how amazing she looks when she just opens her eyes, you just lost 500 points. And men are like, I told you I love you last week. Nothing's changed. Why should I say it again? So it's just such a great conversation about the differences between the way men and women perceive. And certainly having some understanding of those differences contributes to cleanliness, because then it lets us communicate more effectively, right? Yeah. In between us, you and your sister, you're both women, but you both think very differently about things, right? So being able to some degree understand that she's just not ready, and it's not because of you. You may have contributed something to it, but where she's at right now is because of life and so many other situations that you have no idea about. Yeah, we're all very complicated. Any other questions or reflections? Very welcome. Okay, time is up. I'm 4 minutes late. It's 11:34. I think you'll forgive me, I hope. Otherwise, call me when you're ready. Let's sit nice and tall. We'll close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. Place your right hand on your heart, left hand over the right. And send loving kindness to everybody you've ever met, ever had anything to do with, ever walked past on a street, ever seen from a distance. Send loving kindness out to all beings everywhere, human and not human. May we all come into bigger hearts, brighter light, and deeper peace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here today. As always, lovely to gather with you. And so now, Linda and Heather are in the kitchen and they're serving. So please have lunch and enjoy that. They're having zucchini strata. Oh, I'm so intrigued. And some other wonderful things to go with that. From now on, just as a quick reminder, we're asking everybody to park out front and overflow parking in the back. But please come in the front door from now on. Door number 7 won't be unlocked any longer for the weekends. We'd like everybody to come in the front door. And from time to time, that's going to be changing. Please bear with us and have patience, because we have some big projects coming up for the ashram that are construction oriented. And so there may be some times where we reorient people to come in one door versus another. Yeah, soon. Sometime over the winter it will begin. And then through the spring and summer probably too. So, yeah. So please just be patient with us as we go through some changes and some upgrades. So next week when you come in, you'll probably see the altar will start being built. So that may not be finished, but it'll be in process, and you'll be able to see it as it grows into what it is meant to be. And yeah, lots of wonderful things. So I will see you all next week. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.